Welcome back to the Good Dude, Good Dad podcast. I am Jordan.
And I'm Ben.
And today we're going to interview Ben.
I'm excited for it. We honestly just decided this.
2 seconds ago.
Yeah, because we're trying to talk about topics and different things like that. And we were just a guest on another podcast. And so I was like, why don't you interview me? And then I don't know what the questions are going to be or anything like that.
Well, I don't know what the questions are going to be.
So we're just going to go for it.
We just figured it out.
And then next episode, I'll interview him. And so it'll be kind of this cool little, you get to hear the interviewers be the interviewee.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, well, let's get it.
Let's start off by this. Ben, tell me a little bit about, like, your childhood. Like, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Did you go to college? That kind of stuff. The basics.
Cool.
The basics.
Yeah, I grew up in Orange County, California. I had an awesome childhood. I just talked about this with somebody. Who the heck was it? I don't know. I just literally had this conversation because we just had a bunch of family in town, which was really rad because we don't get to see half of our family very often. So it was a really cool week. But childhood for me and how different childhoods can be to different siblings is also kind of a trippy thing because that's kind of what we were talking about in this conversation.
It was us. We were talking about that, yeah.
So it's weird because anyways, I had a great childhood, grew up here in Orange County and in an amazing home with two loving parents, very, very present parents, parents that were doing the best that they knew how with the resources and tools that they had at the time. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, in the 80s, they didn't have access to YouTube and all these parenting books and all these different things, right? It was kind of just figured out,
yeah.
Right? And I feel like we're so lucky in this technology era and culture that we have the ability to access different things. I mean, obviously, you still have to figure it out. And, things are hard and you got to figure things out, but we have so much more resources and tools now. So my parents, own their own companies since my entire childhood, here in Santa Ana, actually, which is dope. And they built a window covering manufacturing business and installation and all that other stuff.
That's cool.
So they started it in a 2-bedroom condo on the kitchen table with nothing. And built a pretty successful and substantially large business at one point. And so I got to see at a very young age, like what genuine like hard work is, right?
Oh,
and
for sure.
Working for yourself towards something, to build something. I got to see all of that at a young age. I got to participate in a lot of it, which was really cool. But through all that, I think that's really where I started to kind of formulate my own work ethic, I guess you could say, is watching my dad, watching my mom hustle and grind and, do everything they were doing so they could provide a life for my sister and I, and for literally the entire family on my mom's side, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's what we were talking about this last week with my cousins is I'm pretty sure my parents at one point employed almost my whole side of my mom's family.
Oh, way.
And so my dad was like, he was like the godfather, I guess you could say, of providing jobs. And when I think back at that and the significance and the substance to that, it's pretty deep because he was younger than me for a lot of this. And when I look back at it and you think of your dad, right? You think of your dad as like they have everything figured out. And now that I'm a dad and we're dads and I'm the age that I am, they bought the house that they lived in, the house that I grew up in, the house that they're still in.
Yeah.
When my dad was like 10 years younger than what I am now.
Wow.
And so to think of those things, I mean, yes, I get it. Different time, different economy.
Yeah, but that's a trip.
Right? Like that house he bought when he was younger than us. And he built a company and just so many things that, I see so many similarities in myself also, which is a really cool thing.
Yeah.
But all that to say is to just give credits to my mom and dad for instilling in me at such a young age, whether they intended to or not, just the hard work, the never quit, the genuine like heart of generosity. I learned from my parents. I learned from obviously my faith in God, but that kind of sums up my childhood, man. Watching my parents grind it out to build something that they probably thought was going to be their legacy until they lost everything. And they lost everything in a way that I had no idea what was going on, because I was in the Marine Corps, and they kept it all from me because they're, obviously didn't want me worrying about their business and them when I'm going to war. And just another testament to the character of my dad and my mom, hid everything from me so well, actually. I didn't start picking up on things until I think I came home from, I think it was my second deployment. I think is when I don't know. But anyways, I'm rambling a lot, but my childhood was great. Played sports, did well at sports, was never into school, actually hated school. I knew I was going to go in the Marine Corps at a really young age, so I never took school seriously. I never took sports seriously either, because I knew I was going to go in the Marines. And come graduation time, time to leave for boot camp. So I left home at 18, got stationed in the beautiful state of North Carolina, which I actually fell in love with at the time. Southern hospitality is a real thing. A little Orange County boy moving and going to the South was a trip, dude. It was a trip to me because, if you're not from here, people refer to as Orange County as like the bubble, and like that we live in this bubble. You have lots of wealthy people, lots of nice cars, lots of nice real estate, beautiful weather, like the bubble. And I remember the culture shock that I went into of going into the South.
Yeah.
And it was just such a trip, but it made me appreciate that like so much. I loved it. I fell in love with it. My dad's from South Dakota, and he grew up ranching. He grew up on a ranch, like hunting for their food, harvesting, like working day in, day out. Like that's the life he grew up. And the fact that he comes to Orange County and my mom made him stay here essentially. And fast forward, go in the Marine Corps, and really started to develop who I am as a man there. At a young age, 18, 19 years old, that you're a freaking child at that point. And, when you're enlisting into the military, you're just figuring out like what the heck to do, who you are. You just graduated high school where you've been told what to do, how to do it for your entire life. You've never had to think for yourself, and then they expect you to be able to just go to war. And it was a trip, right? I mean, the time's a little different now, but I learned who I was as a man pretty quick. And, I didn't have a team to rely on. I didn't have my friends to rely on. I didn't have my family to rely on. There's no one to hide behind except for you.
Yeah.
And you just figure out kind of who you are. And obviously that fight or flight really, really, I think, becomes evident in the person in those moments, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because there's choices you have to make that you're going to have to live with.
Yeah.
And there's no, hey, son, do that, right?
Right.
So went on 2 combat deployments, one to Iraq, one to Afghanistan. Again, learned more about myself, grew as a person, grew as a man, as a leader, as a Christian, all of that fun stuff. Got out, started my first business in 2009, technically is when we incorporated for Hidden House.
Yeah.
And then we opened in 2010. And I came back and was definitely a different person than when I had left. And it was a trip because you always make excuses for yourself by comparing. Right. And we all compare, and we've talked about that before, but comparison is like the thief of joy.
100%.
But it can also be like a mirage, a mirror, a reflection, a deflection.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I came home, I didn't think there's really anything wrong with me. I didn't think I had PTSD. I didn't think I had any of those issues, because you look at your friends and your friends are, doing wild things, or they've gone kind of crazy, or they're doing crazy things, they're angry, they're violent, that, you know, they're suffering from the things that we had just seen. Like, you go from extremes, you go from a heightened sense of, I got to be at 100 at all times. Someone's trying to kill me. I'm sleeping, but I have a knife in my hand. You go from all these things to back to life, right? And life for us is in Orange County. And so going from sleeping with a knife in my hand under a truck at you know, in the middle of the desert of Afghanistan, to North Carolina for a little bit, but then to home in Orange County, like, I say it all the time. I think I've said it on here, but if I would have come home and nothing would have been different, then I think I would have been a sociopath.
Yeah,
right?
probably.
Like if you went through all that crap and you came home and were like, oh yeah, let's just jump back into normal life, I would say that you probably have some issues. Respectfully, go get yourself checked out. But
at least the first time.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, sorry, I'm gonna go off on a tangent.
No, go for it.
I mean, that first time. I mean, dude, I even remember, like, being on the ambulance, like, the first time dealing with something where that was, like, to most people, they'll never have to see in their entire life. That first time changes you.
Yeah.
And that first moment changes you. But after a while, you almost kind of go numb to it a little bit in a way. At least, I don't know.
Yeah, no. You get used to it.
Yeah.
And it becomes your normal.
Yeah.
But that's what starts to become your normal. And that's where the things of PTSD start to kick in. Because your new normal is not normal. Right. It's just your normal for that season.
And you feel like you're normal, but...
Yeah, you know, because you're going through those things, the people you're with are going through those things. So your daily normal is that. That's your new normal.
Yeah.
But it's a season of life. You can't live within that normal as a permanent. Like, it's impossible. And I don't care who you are or what baddest of dudes or girls you are, like, it's impossible to live in that 100% high drive 24/7 without a crash at some point. It's going to happen.
Yeah. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. So coming home, you know, this is the reason why I'm sharing this, is as he's interviewing me and who I am as a person, like, this was a big part of who I am. And from 2010 to about 2013, I was trying to figure out how to live my life in a quote unquote back to normal Orange County way. And the problem with that is I didn't really know I had those issues. I didn't know I was suffering from, I wouldn't even say I had like this crazy PTSD. Obviously I did, but I wouldn't even say to this day that I had this like crazy PTSD. I think for me, I mean, yes, it's a form of it. I get it. Don't come for me, all you medical people out there. But for me, it was like, you know, just trying to figure out how to assimilate back into life and who I am now. Because I was not the same 18-year-old scrawny little boy that left home, you know. I
literally and physically.
Yeah, like a literal. I was a tiny little kid, and I came back, and my wife jokes about it all the time because she saw pictures of me back then, and she's like, "Oh, you got the Captain America glow up," and you know, and it's a real thing though. And but my mind was never the same, and still has never been the same. My emotions, my spirituality, my physicality, all of it has never been the same, and nor will it ever. And again, it's a special, that those 3 years hold such a special place in my life, because without them, without all the stupidity, without the mental warfare that I was going through, the spiritual warfare I was going through, I would not be who I am today, right? I would not be able to sit in this chair and be like, oh yeah, I think I'm a pretty good dude and a pretty good dad. I wouldn't even have the ability to say, oh yeah, dude, don't even put me in that room. Like, get me out, you know? And we all have those stories, but that season of life and coming back and having my own business, I went from leading Marines to having to lead a business. And so since I have been 18 years old, I have been in a position of leadership since I was 18 freaking years old. And when I think about that, I'm 36 now, right? 18 years of my life, adult life, has been in a position where people have had to come to me for something or for some answer. And I didn't, up until recently realize like how insanely exhausting that is. And because I've never really thought about it up until this last season of life. And you know, a lot of it is awesome, and it's a great position to be in. I'm very thankful that God's used me in this position, but you know, when I look back at all these years, there's been so many moments where I've needed other people to pour into me, right?
Yeah.
Or I needed other people to let me just like take the back seat for a little bit. And again, that's okay. I chose the paths I'm on, right?
Heavy is the crown, right?
Yeah, dude. And I didn't realize, like, I just thought, oh yeah, it's what you do. You just suck it up, right? But the weight that can carry sometimes is kind of crazy. And if you're not honest with yourself, then I would say that, again, you know, you're not really looking inward. But anyways,
Real quick, branching off of that, what are the different stages, or like how did you make that transition from leading, right? So over the years, you started off as leading Marines at 18 years old in combat. You come back and now you're in your early 20s leading a bunch of coffee shop people. That's not derogatory, but like, you know, going from the Marine Corps to leading like literally the polar opposite type of human that usually works at a coffee shop. There's nothing wrong with that. I've worked at a coffee shop, to now you being older and mature and still having to lead those kind of people across multiple companies.
Oh man. When I was younger, coming out of the Marines at 22 and opening your own business in a hospitality retail customer service job was so difficult, man. I actually had harder times with customers than I did with staff at that time. And again, that 2010 to 2013.
Most of it was like your family at first too, right?
At first, yeah. But that 2010 to 2013, I had a short fuse. I basically had no fuse, and it would take one little spark to just set me on freaking fire. And I didn't know how to turn it off, because I would go, my body, my mind, my heart, my freaking mental awareness would go straight back into hyperdrive, right? And that was part of the problems of all my issues, was trying to figure out how to regulate that. You know, how do you go from going what you went through to, you know, going back into normal life, but learning how to tone it down without losing those other characteristics that make you. And I found, like, really quickly and rapidly that obviously, like, I had a little bit of a problem. A lot of it was alcohol induced. You know, a lot of my trouble I was getting in was because of alcohol and drinking and excessive drinking and not understanding where the limits were, because I had a mentality of there are no limits. It was all or nothing. It was 100, all gas, no brake. And I did that with everything, you know, the business, with partying, with girls, with the sports I was in, with everything I did at 100. And again, it's because my body was so used to being at 100. And
that's not just combat either. I feel like that's what the Marine Corps does. Like,
I mean, you don't want to send some freaking dude in there that's at 20.
Exactly.
Right? He's going to get shot, or he's going to kill other people.
Right.
Like, you want 100. You want a freaking a dog firing on all cylinders, right? That's the job. That's what we signed up for. That's the assignment that I was understanding.
That's why you joined the Marine Corps.
And you know, but again, you don't realize the things it does to you, right? And so, like, all that to say, man, is like, I had to, the question that you asked is, I had to learn myself. I had to learn a lot about myself, and I didn't understand it for a long time. I would say, I don't think I understood and actually knew what leadership was, and probably until I was like 25 or 26. And so for those first several years, I was kind of just making it up or doing the best that I thought I could, right? A lot of it was ego driven. And, you know, I was this badass dude that didn't need help. And when you look back at that, like, dude, that's so stupid. But I had to go through it to figure it out. A lot of people out there that, you know, will listen to this, you got to go through it to figure it out. And, you know, hopefully, like, the encouragement would be is, like, you don't have to go through that. You can learn, and you can take pieces from so many different things that you like and make it yours and still go through it. But don't be naive and ignorant to listening to things that could help you. And back then, I didn't have that. It was either you're going to be better at it than me, or don't talk to me about it. And so to answer the question about leading from back then, from the Marine Corps to now, over 18 years, the biggest lesson I've learned is myself and understanding what that really means. And it means not putting myself first.
Right.
And I mean that in everything. The only time I will put myself first is if it's going to make me better at being able to continue doing what I'm doing, right? Outside of that, like, it sounds so stupid, but a lot of Devin's family gives me a hard time still to this day. Like, I won't go eat until I know everyone's eaten. And it's just a thing. It's a thing that I need to do for myself. And because that's what you do. And it's what I've been accustomed to doing, is trying to put the needs of others that I care about before the needs of myself. And that means learning how to do that, right? It's a tool. You have to learn how to harness it. And there's moments, obviously, that I have to do something first before I can let somebody else do it. But that's because it goes back to caring about others before yourself. Anyways, those years, like I said, they're my formative years. They're my psycho years. It's I got in a lot of fights, hooked up with a lot of girls, not proud of it. I used to think it was cool, right? You sit that, especially if you're a younger guy, you think it's rad, right? Like, oh my gosh, like being able to, get whatever girl you wanted at that time. And it's not cool. Like the emotions I toyed with, the hearts that I played with, the stupid things, messed up things that I did to these different girls at the time is not cool. And people ask me if I regret the stuff that I did in my past. My answer is no, I don't, because I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't go through those things, right? The one regret I do have, and I've actually, I was talking to my wife about, is I wish I didn't destroy some of those people. I'm sure they're fine now, but in those seasons and in those moments, I saw what it did, and I was like cool with it. Like, on to the next one, right? And you think it's okay, or I thought it was okay, and it's not. And so that would be the one regret that I have from those years. Outside of that,
do you think that's coming from having a daughter now?
Probably, for sure. I think having a daughter now helps me fully understand it.
Yeah.
But I think it's coming from a place of knowing who I am. And not needing to fill a void in my life with whatever that was at the time, the instant, at the moment gratification.
Yeah.
And I've matured in my faith. I've matured as a man, as a husband, as a father, to a beautiful girl. Yeah, I think that has a huge thing.
So what would you say to people that, like, I love how you said, like, do I regret the things I've done? No, but like I can look at it, pull something out, and change. Like, wish I could have changed a little bit. How? Where was I going with that question? How do you look back over your past and pull lessons from it, and can wish you can do things differently without condemning yourself or feeling shame over the past?
Oh,
because I feel like a lot of people have that. I feel like they'll look back over their life and it turns into a shame fest versus a...
Yeah, they'll have guilt.
Yeah.
I have no guilt. And that's easy because... Well, it's easy because I believe that we have redemption and that we have grace. What I had to learn back then was the grace. The years I was coming out of it, the embarrassment I felt when I would walk into a room and see people that knew me during that season, and I've like this reformed, changed man, right? Like... I had to live with that. Those were my choices. Those actions had consequences. And I had to learn that people are going to talk about you, but you deserve it, man. But you got to own it, and you got to be okay with it. And you have to know who you are in your own self-worth and your identity. And my identity, and the only thing that got me through the stuff I was going through at that time was, my faith in Jesus. That's the only thing that saved me and got me to the place I am. I got so disgusted with who I was at one point that I had hit this like ultimate rock bottom, right? And I had to take that hard look at myself and be like, dude, you are a piece of trash. Like, fix it. And I fixed it. I obviously stumbled a few times and I had to continue to work on it. And it's something I still continue to work on now, but guilt is not something I suffer from, because I understand that God's grace and the redeeming factor of the person I am now through the amount of years of work to put into my own self has got me to where I am.
So you're saying that you don't need to feel guilt and shame because you're able to look back on the past and say, because of that, I know that I was receiving grace all during that time. So that, like, the proof is in the past.
Yes.
The proof of grace now in your redemption is in the past.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but also it's more than that. I'm using those moments that you would have felt guilt and shame to never do that ever again, and to learn from those, and to genuinely and actively choose not to ever do those things again, and to instill in my children and my family and my circle of influence that that's not okay.
Yeah.
I'm using the bad for a continuous and constant good. It doesn't make what I did right.
No.
So I shouldn't say I don't have guilt. I have asked for forgiveness so many times over the years. And I would say if I just like was naive and be like, oh, well, you know, it was 10 years ago, whatever. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I had to forgive myself.
Right.
And those people, I asked a couple of them for forgiveness in the past, and not all of them, obviously, but, you know, some of them I did. But I also had to forgive myself, man. And that's something I think a lot of people don't know how to do. And it's hard, right? Because it's not like, because I think what I could already hear somebody spinning my words and saying that is, oh, that's just like, you're just like an egotistical guy. You forgave yourself. And I'm like, no, bro, you're missing the point. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm using all the bad that I did and that I went through to make sure that I can be the best version of myself forever moving forward.
I'm going to get real churchy on you there for a second too. Because if those people are like, oh, you're egotistical. I mean, in our faith, we believe that Jesus died on the cross for our sins. So that immediately when we ask for forgiveness, it's as if it never happened in his sight. So all the guilt and shame and condemnation is we're bringing on on ourselves.
Yeah, your human nature.
Your human nature is. So you're just walking in the fact that you're already forgiven because you've asked for that forgiveness. Is that correct?
Correct. And using it. So I cannot do those things.
Right.
And that I can share my story, and hopefully my story will encourage a young man, a young woman, and, you know, because that story goes both ways. Like, to the young man, it's, hey, don't be afraid to ask for help. Like, don't be afraid. You've said it numerous times. Don't be afraid to fail from something, as long as you use that as a lesson to never let that particular failure happen again. Don't be scared and stuck because you have this ego that you think is so big and you're so powerful, because you're not, man. Like, you're not. Like, I'm not. You're not. None of us are. Like, we're all going to have to figure it out every single freaking day. And to the girl, know who you are and who your identity, like, lies in. Just know your self-worth. Know that you shouldn't let somebody take advantage of you. Know how you should be treated. Know, like, all these things, right? And it's something that I'm super passionate about, and hopefully I can instill that in my kids, is to, one, let my son see how you should treat others, a woman, friends, family, quote unquote enemies. Like, let them see how you're supposed to treat people. And then to my daughter, let her see through those same actions that we've talked about, in how I communicate with my wife, how I love on my wife, how I treat my wife. Let her see that, and hopefully that sinks in so deep that she'll know, like, when, you know, a guy is doing the wrong thing or the right thing, and to know who she is in herself. That all three of my kids can be fiercely strong in who they are, that they don't need to rely on all this other crap, right? Because they know who they are. And that's something to me that my past represents, is I knew who I was, or I thought I knew who I was, but I had to die to self to learn who I am and who my identity lies in. And I think that's something I think out of today's podcast that I think is the most powerful thing, is learning who you are and where your strength comes from.
Yeah.
And genuinely having, like, that self-worth. Like, there's so many times, even still to this day, that I think, I'm like, dude, you're messing up, man, or you should be up here, right? Like, we've talked about that. And, you know, again, comparison's the thief of joy, man. Like, we gotta learn to be honest with ourselves, to give ourselves grace, to give ourselves the space to learn and to grow when we know we need to grow. Every single one of us on this planet has room to grow. And I think if we're being open and, again, honest with ourselves, we'll understand that. And that's what my childhood, the Marine Corps years, my formative years up until now represents to me.
That's awesome. This went 100% different. We're like, cause I like
I
put
think
something
so,
different
too.
in my mind, but I love that, dude. That was so awesome. And you wrapped it all up nicely for me, because I was about to ask you, like, how did you take all that stuff and put it in being a dad moving forward? But you kind of already did that. All right. So let's say doing that, we just had this question on a podcast we were a guest for then. Taking those things, I loved this question, so I'm going to steal, Ned, I'm stealing your question. Your kids are 18 years old. They're getting ready. They're leaving the house. What is one thing that out of that you would say to them as you're launching them out in the world, or one hope that you and your wife have? Because I know you guys have talked about it for your kids moving forward.
Yeah, it was a great question that he asked us on Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. And
thank you. I was going to do that plug.
Yeah, it was a great question. And I said something along the lines of kind of how I just wrapped it up. But what I genuinely hope that I can instill in my children from now until they're leaving home is, it sounds so simple saying out loud, but there's so much that goes to it. And there's not just one teaching lesson you can do to do this, right? Or to give this to your kid.
Right.
It is a from now until forever, until I'm no longer here lesson. And it's understanding your self-worth. And what does that mean? That means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But your self-worth is what makes you you, so you know exactly who you are in every situation, that you don't need to look to the approval of whoever's in front of you or whatever situation is in front of you. It's being who you are at all times, when no one is looking, when thousands are looking. But it's having the self-worth and identity of knowing that you are strong, you are capable, you're hopefully God-fearing and loving and just a trustworthy individual, but just knowing your self-worth and knowing that you don't need a man or a woman or a car or dollars or any of that stuff to fill the voids of not knowing who you are. So that's what I would say.
What, okay, to the one guy that's watching this podcast, right? Maybe he's our age, maybe he's slightly younger, but he's a man, right? He's struggling with self-worth or knowing who he is. He has no idea. It's just like, I don't even know where to begin. What would you say is like one actionable step that you would take towards knowing yourself or discovering who you are?
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't know if I think there's a lot of variables that go into that.
Yeah.
I think the biggest one, before you could really figure out who you are, is to kind of figure out what you want. And what I mean by that is, do you want to be a better man because you're tired of who you are? Do you want to be a billionaire because you want power, fame, and money? Do you want to be a good dad? Do you want to be a good husband? Do you want to be a Christian, a Muslim, a Buddhist? Like, what do you want? I don't think you can understand who you are if you're lost right now. I mean, if you don't really know what you want. And I mean that in every way. Like, do I want a happy life? Do I want to be better? Do I want to find my self-worth? Do I want to think about my future? Do I want to be better? Like, you can't sometimes help somebody fix something they don't want to fix. And so I know that's not like the answer that someone might be thinking, but to me in this moment and without thought going into it, I would say you got to figure out what you want before you can figure out how to fix it or where to go or what to do. I mean, the other answer would be, I would say, open your Bible. And that's a great place to figure out who you are and what you would want. But there's people out there that might not want to do that. And so I would just, again, say, like, you got to figure out what the heck you want. I think that would be my answer.
I heard a great analogy on that once. It was used in a different context, but I think it applies that sometimes there's people that are just, it's like they're sitting in a car and they're just driving, but they have no idea what their destination is.
Yeah.
Because you can be sitting in a car driving, let's say like I hopped in my car right now and started driving north, but I wanted to go to Australia. It's like, well, that's not really going to get me there.
Yeah.
Right? So having a destination helps you define the vehicle and how you're going to get there.
100%. Well, and it's like a model that we use in business coaching, right? Or leadership coaching or self-development, anything. Like you got to figure out what your point B is before you can figure out where point A is. And well, at least that's how I operate,
right.
And how my mentor taught me is like you know, if you want to go to B, let's map out what B is. So we can take actionable steps backwards to map that out on how to get there. Like I can say, like you said, I can aimlessly just say, hey, I'm going to go to Australia. But I would, after now I know B is Australia.
Yeah.
So now let's work backwards. Okay, how the heck do we get there? I can't get in my car. Well, I guess I could get in my car, but I have to take my car to an airport.
Right.
And then that airport's going to take me to potentially 1 to 2 more airports. So it's, it's knowing what the destination is so you can work backwards to get there.
Awesome. Well, one last question before we wrap up. I just want to know, with all that, all those life lessons, those things that you've learned your whole formative years childhood, what would you want to see out of Good Dude, Good Dad? What would you want to see out of Good Dude, Good Dad? Does that make sense?
Yeah. The short answer to that is I just want to see a movement happen. I want to see a movement that we didn't think was possible happen. That by something as simple as saying good dude, good dad, it triggers emotions in people, guys, girls, husbands, wives, kids, that it triggers something that's so powerful that it causes you to be like moving forward into a momentum of becoming a good dude and a good dad. Because I think if we can fix the home and the males in the home, we could probably help fix a lot of things. And, I never understood the power of a father until I became one. And I still don't understand it until I see my kids mimicking something that I did, good or bad. And I think it's powerful. I think it's underestimated. I think there's not enough resources. I think there's a stigma behind it. I think so many things could be solved with strong male role models in your life, if you're listening, in your sphere of like influence. I want to see Good Dude, Good Dad become something that I didn't think was possible.
Yeah.
I want to see God change lives. I want to see myself as a husband and a father continue to grow and develop so I can be the best for my family. I want to see all those things, and I think it is possible.
Yeah.
And I think there is a need for it. And I think men need to be men again. And I think, if we, with our tiny little podcast right now, can help spark something because of this movement that I keep referring to, that's what I would love to see.
You want to make men great again. Huh?
Ooh. Oh, man.
Well, that was awesome, man. I will throw in, we do believe and we want to see strong women in the household too. I'm excited. I eventually, we've talked about this before, love to have our wives on the podcast because I think that would be super impactful and awesome. But
dude, without my wife, I would not be half of what I am. And
100%.
It's not, I just don't talk about it in this setting a lot, but because, we're specifically talking to men, but
right.
The notion that a man is greater than a woman is so stupid.
It's just silly.
And I'm glad you said that because it is powerful. She is my dude. My wife is my literal, just everything. Pushes me to be better. Without her, I probably wouldn't be half of the person I am today. So
we actually have an
powerful.
awesome reel on our Instagram of you describing that. It I think it's done pretty well, but it was awesome. I'm actually probably going to repost it because I loved it. It's probably one of my favorite sound clips that we've had from our podcast.
I don't even remember. But
that's all right.
That means
all right.
it was honest.
It was honest.
All right, my man.
Thank you guys for listening. That was Ben. We're going to do part 2 where he'll interview me. I'll say like a whole ton, and it'll be a lot less exciting of an interview.
Oh, you're so dumb.
But yeah, anything you want to say before we get off?
No, my man.
All right.
Thank
Remember,
you, guys.
Be a good dude. Be a good dad.
Oh, yeah.